Grandma here reading the Golden Goblet, and I'm beginning chapter 9. Now, at the end of chapter 8, Ranofer is late getting home, and he doesn't know how he's going to explain it to his brother, because he has, in his excitement to go to Zhao's, he forgot to pick up his pay. So he has come home empty-handed. The following morning, Ranofer crept to the shop, sore in every muscle, with the old familiar strips of fire across his shoulder. He's been whipped. As he had expected, Gebu did not believe the simple truth that he had forgotten to collect his wages. The added truth, which might have convinced him, the story of the visit to Zhao, Ranofer had stubbornly withheld. He'd paid a high price for his silence, but even a beating was preferable to turning his heart and hopes inside out for Gebu's scornful inspection. Seeing them withered with ridicule and blown away like dust before his eyes, he had little enough hope left in him as it was after the conversation with Zhao. Gebu came into the shop in the middle of the morning, snarled ill-naturedly at Pai, and stalked about inspecting the work in a manner that caused every man to bend closer to his chisel or drill, and all conversation to cease. Ranofer, scrubbing away with sandstone at a chunk of quartzite, dared not glance around when Gebu paused beside a half-finished stone coffin only a few feet away from him. His very skin shrank in an effort to put more distance between him and his half-brother, but he could not help being aware of the voices of Gebu and Pai, gradually raised in argument until they could be heard even over the clatter of the shop. "You, Ranofer!" Pai roared suddenly. Ranofer dropped his sandstone, looked around fearfully. "That scroll on the lower shelf, the plan of the judge's tomb. Fetch it, hurry." Ranofer hurried, as much as the soreness of his legs allowed, to the storeroom at the far end of the shop. There were 5 scrolls on the lower shelf. With hands made clumsy by haste, he unrolled one after another. From being ordered often to bring some particular scroll to Pai, he had become superficially familiar with these drawings, which at first had looked like meaningless bird tracks to him. All tomb plans were similar in design, but he could now tell one from another by recognizing some detail. The judge's was the one with the narrowest entrance passage and only 2 rooms beside the burial chamber. It was the last he picked up. He snatched it and returned to Pai, who took it without a glance. Ranofer was glad to be ignored, gladder still to be safely back at work, when a moment later, Gebu's voice rose in an angry bellow directed at Pai. "You see, imbecile? The coffin is too wide. I told you. Perhaps you would care to chip away the sides of the passage on the day of the burial." "It is easy enough to alter the coffin," Pai answered sulkily. "Then alter it, and hereafter heed what I say, or I will find a foreman who will." Gebu stalked past Ranofer with nothing more than a glare, and Pai followed, thrusting the scroll at Ranofer as he went by. As Ranofer scrambled down from his stone to take the scroll back, he saw Pai at the pay box, counting out to Gebu the coppers from yesterday and those for today as well. "He means to take no chances that I will forget tonight," Ranofer thought as he started for the storeroom. Cursed. 1. What does he care for my coppers except to make sure I do not get them? If only I could keep them, I could hide them away and someday buy a donkey. But he does not even need them, especially these days when he swaggers around in his fine head cloths and new-made sandals. He has 2 pair of sandals now, one with buckles like a judge's. Aye, and he eats fish often, and salted waterfowl. I can smell them in the storeroom at home, and he reeks always of wine or barley beer. Ranofer's thoughts paused in surprise. He stood in the storeroom, the scroll forgotten in his hands, and considered these things. Until now, he'd paid them no attention. Certainly Gebu seemed to be increasingly well-to-do. The sandals, the headcloths of fine linen, several of them. Yes, and for some time Gebu had reeked of expensive ointments, as well as barley beer. My coppers cannot have made all the difference, Ranofer reflected. Perhaps the Farin bearer had paid a great sum for that red granite coffin with the alabaster lid, or else Pharaoh must have rewarded the stonecutters handsomely indeed for the work on the temple. How else could the cursed one have grown rich so suddenly unless he was stealing again? The instant the idea occurred to Ranofer, he was sure it was the answer. A remark of Gebu's sprang into his mind. Him and his paltry wineskins, there are far bigger birds in the air than Rake the goldsmith. Obscure at the time they were spoken, the words were now as clear to Ranofer as the shape of the shelves in front of him. Gebu had found some other goldsmith to rob, and no doubt a better, safer way to do it. No wonder he had needed the Babylonian no longer, and scarcely taken notice of his dismissal. The new scheme must have been already in operation. Ranofer thrust the scroll onto the shelf and hurried back to his work, filled again with the hope that he had thought almost quenched yesterday. This time, if he found Gebu out, he would make sure of his proof. He would find witnesses. Better, this time he had friends who might help, not only Hecate, but the ancient. He could scarcely wait until midday. When it came at last, he ran at full speed to the thicket, disregarding his soreness and passers-by alike. He ran so fast that he was the first to arrive in the little green room and had to wait fuming with impatience and groaning a little in spite of himself at the flames he had stirred to life across his shoulders. Presently, however, Hecate and the ancient arrived together, speaking in low tones as they came along the shaded little path with the soft-eyed donkey plodding behind them. Ranofer suspected Hecate had been telling the old man about what had happened at Zau's, no doubt feeling he must explain beforehand Ranofer's probable gloom. They both looked surprised when Ranofer jumped to his feet and pulled them through the reeds into the little clearing, urging them to sit down quickly and listen. Gebu has been beating you again, Hecate said, with a sharp glance at his friend's shoulders. Aye, because I forgot my coppers yesterday, but I'm glad I did because it made me think. Now listen to me. The story poured out. Gebu's sandals, his headcloths, his ointments, his peculiar remark to Winneman months before. Hecate and the ancient mechanically performed the usual ritual of dividing what food there was, but their attention was riveted on Ranofer. Hecate grew so excited that by the time Ranofer paused for breath, his snub-nosed face was transformed and he could scarcely sit still. You are right. I know you're right. Isn't it so, ancient? How else could a man become so rich in a few months' time unless Pharaoh had singled him out for a favor? And that one is as likely to be singled out by Pharaoh as I am to lose my appetite overnight. Here, Ranofer, take one of these loaves and some grapes. Now, what shall we do about it? I don't know, Ranofer answered, realizing for the first time he had no idea how to proceed. He glanced questioningly at the ancient, who was old and must therefore know a great deal about everything. But he found the old man looking both thoughtful and dubious. The doubt was contagious. Ranofer turned away quickly and said in a louder tone than he intended, "But we can do something, that much is certain. We can find out more. I will watch Gebu, see where he goes." He was talking at random, but Hecate pounced on the words. "Aye, that's it. Follow him as often as you can. See who he talks to. Try to hear what they say. His companions. We must discover his companions. That skulking Winneman is surely part of the scheme. Perhaps I could watch him. He lives but a step from the apprentices' quarters. We will become spies. Who else is Gebu's friend, or does he have any others? Well, there is the river captain. Of course, I do not know if he has anything to do with this. Aha, a river captain! Hecate was in transports. Naturally, that would be a river captain. Do you see? They must smuggle the gold out of the city in some way, perhaps to Abydos. They would not dare barter raw gold here for headcloths or sandals. Someone would soon ask how they came by it. Do you agree, Ancient? Aye, that is doubtless the way they would do it, the old man said slowly. So slowly that Ranofer stole again ancient glances at him. Hecate was already talking again. The ancient can spy on the river captain. What could be easier? He's here near the river all day. He goes each evening to the sailmakers by the docks. An excellent idea. Ast, what a bright fellow I am, as the stone said when it looked into the copper mirror. What's this river captain's name? Setma. Setma, the ancient echoed. Do you know him, Ancient? Aye, I know him. I do not like his sort. Oh, Winneman is worse, Ranofer said quickly, and Gebu worst of all, Hecate added. Once more, Ranofer searched the old man's face. Now do you believe all this, he ventured. Oh, I never said I did not believe you, young one. You've not said much of anything at all, Ranofer said uncertainly. And we're going to stop there. So what do you think the ancient is going to tell them? I think he's going to tell them to stay out of it and that it's dirty business and they could get hurt. What do you think? Well, we'll find out next time. Bye-bye.